الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. الحمد لله. اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما، وقل رب زدني علما. اللهم وفقنا توفيق الصالحين. بسم الله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. So continuing on, Imam Sulaiman ibn al-Ash'ath, Abu Dawud al-Mulaqab bi Abi Dawud al-Azdi al-Sajistani said, كتبت عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 500,000 حديثا وانتخذت منها ما ضمنته هذا الكتاب، يعني السنن، ويكفي الإنسان لدينه منها 4 أحاديث: إنما الأعمال بالنيات، من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه، لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه، أو هو يروي حتى يرضى لأخيه ما يرضي لنفسه، يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه، وإن الحلال بين وإن الحرام بين وبينهما أمور مشتبهات. So these 4 hadiths, he's saying this suffices a person. If they know and understand these 4 hadiths, it suffices them in their religion from the hadith. So the hadith we looked at last night, and I wanted to finish up on it before we go to the next hadith. And there is a qa'idah that Sidi Ahmed Zarruq has in his qawaid, qa'idatan asasaha Zarruq wa lam tazal aqwaluhu taruq. حفظ النظام واجب ومراعاة المصلحة العامة لازم، فلذلك أجمعوا على تحريم الخروج عن الإمام بقول أو فعل حتى انجر إلى إجماعهم على الصلاة خلف كل بر وفاجر من الولاة وغيرهم ما لم يكن فسقه في عين الصلاة. وكذا يرون الجهاد مع كل أمير من المسلمين وإن كان فاجرا لا غيره. وزعم ابن مجاهد الإجماع أو إجماع المسلمين وأنكره ابن حزم، وفيه كلام لهما، والمعول عليه المنع بكل حال. فلقد قال عليه الصلاة والسلام: ما سب قوم أميرهم إلا حرموا خيره. قال عليه الصلاة والسلام: المؤمن لا يذل نفسه. قال ابن عباس: يتعرض للسلطان وليس له منه النصف. وفي الترمذي: ما مشى قوم إلى سلطان شبرا ليذلوه إلا أذلهم الله تعالى، إلى غير ذلك مما يطول ذكره ويجمعه قوله عليه السلام: من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه، والقوم أهرب الناس مما لا يعنيه، والله سبحانه وتعالى أعلم. This is I think an extremely important qa'idah. It's a qa'idah that unfortunately, and remember, qa'idah is basically a first principle. Right? That's Dr. Almo was talking about first principles. First principles are musallamat, they're axioms. When you study geometry, what's a first principle in geometry? What's a first principle? You don't even get to triangles with first principle. Triangle, you have to understand first principles to understand a triangle, but a triangle is not part of a first principle. What's that? Okay, that's a first principle, yeah. Or that what a point is, the definition of a point. He's got definitions that he doesn't have any proofs for. You have to accept them because you can't do, so first principles are those things that have to be simply accepted and that you build upon those. The first principles, one of the first principles of ethics is do no harm, right? Doctors learn that. That's part of the Hippocratic Oath. You can't harm, you can't perform an abortion, right? Because an abortion is harmful. It's not just harmful for the child, it's harmful for the mother. People die in abortion operations. So the first principles are the axioms upon which whatever like the first principles of metaphysics, the first principles of ethics, the first principles of geometry, of mathematics. So tasawwuf has first principles. This is one of the first principles of tasawwuf, that you should be preoccupied with what concerns you. And so this qaida is about hifdh al-nizam. One of the interesting things about this modern conflict is Arabic is such an interesting language. For instance, one of the names for government is nizam. Nizam means order. So you say, أَأَنْتَ تُؤَيِّدُ النِّظَامِ? Do you support the order? Well, what's the opposite of order? Fawda. So, and this is where you get what are called haqa'iq. You have haqiqa shar'iyya, haqiqa lughawiyya, haqiqa urfiyya. These are different aspects of language. So for instance, in language, gha'it, what's the haqiqa lughawiyya of gha'it? Does anybody know? You know ghuta in Damascus? Yeah, it's a batha. You know, it's like what they call a hollow in English. It's an area that is lower than the other areas. Now, Arabs used to go, if they wanted to relieve themselves, they would find a gha'it in order to do it. And so they started calling the actual defecation, what came out, gha'it. So the haqiqa lughawiyya is a hollow, but the haqiqa urfiyya is the result of what you do in the hollow. So this is part of the problem with language, is that we have to determine what's the haqiqa here. So in nizam has a haqiqa lughawiyya, but it's also got a haqiqa urfiyya. The lughawiyya is order, but the urfiyya is government. So if you say tu'ayyid al-nizam, it could mean, do you support order? But it could also mean, do you support the government? So you can support order without supporting the government. But that nuance is just too difficult for a lot of people to grasp. So what he's saying is that the preservation of order is an obligation. وَمُرَاعَةَ الْمَصْلَحَةَ الْعَامَّةِ لَازِمٌ. And you have to protect the common weal. Weal is what's beneficial for the people, the public. It's one of the maqasid, it's one of the aims of the American Constitution, is the common weal, to support the common weal. So maslaha is benefit. So you also have to think about the benefit, and that's lazim, it's necessary. فَلِذَلِكَ, for this reason, أَجْمَعُوا, who? The ulama have agreed على تحريم الخروج عن الإمام, that you cannot rebel against your public ruler. This was considered a musallam in traditional Islamic law. Why? Because in the early period of Islam, they rebelled. One of the greatest Muslims of Medina was a Sharif named Muhammad Nafsu Zakiyah. he was a completely righteous man, beloved by everybody, and his nickname was the pure soul. That was a nickname. That wasn't his birth name. It was a nickname. Well, he declared Khilafah. Malik was in Medina. What do you think Malik did? Did he run and take bay'ah with him? He didn't. And Malik's a rightly guided imam by ijma'. Why? Because this was khuruj al-hakim, and Imam Malik just waited. What happened? They came. He ended up getting killed. They killed all the people that rebelled with him. Same thing happened to Abdullah ibn Zubayr when he went out against the Umayyads in Mecca. And what happened? They destroyed the Kaaba. They actually aerial bombarded the Kaaba. Hajjaj ibn Yusuf. And they all died. Abdullah bin Zubayr went to his mother, Asma, and she said, what now? You started this. So they learned by hard experience that going out against the government. Now remember, this was a time when everybody had a sword, and that's all the governments had. They didn't have tanks. They didn't have airplanes. They didn't have S-16s. They didn't have bazookas. They had swords, spears, arrows, and they had catapults. That was, and a catapult, you could see it coming and run. Right? If you see a rock coming over the wall, run and you'll miss it. Because the rocks were like this, and you could literally see it. It was slow enough to be seen because those projectiles were just not that effective. They were mainly used for terror and to knock down walls and things like that. Ramming, they would ram the door. That's all they had. The other thing about those battles is they were fought by men. Men would go out and fight men. That's what they did. And so in those days, a group could, in many ways, there was a real possibility. And often they would be able to get a localized area. They would be able to get a localized area, like Medina. Muhammad Nafs al-Zakiyya took over Medina and held it for a period, over a year. But he lost. And that created a huge, again, backlash against the Ahl al-Bayt, because he was one of the family. Abdullah al-Muthanna, they flee to Morocco, and then the Adarisa come out of that. And they were going and killing them. But this was the time they were in. So the ulama said, these revolutions don't bring any good. Now, the Abbasids came. What did they call their takeover? Does anybody know the word they used? The Abbasids. They called it ad-dawlatul mubarakah, the blessed revolution. Dawla used to mean revolution. Later it becomes used for the state, because starting with Bani Abbas. But dawla actually meant the because حتى لا تكون دولة بين الأغنياء. So it doesn't revolve just around the rich people. تلك الأيام نداولها بين الناس. We move this thing around amongst the people. So dawla is a revolution. So it was with Bani Umayyah, and now the dawla انتقلت إلى Bani Abbas. And it was dawla mubarakah, the blessed revolution, because Bani Abbas they considered to be decadent, and they weren't giving the people their rights. And so they came from Khorasan with the black flags, and they took over Iraq, and they won. And at that point, if one group defeats another, the ulama said, you have to go with what was called the mutaghallib. Because, see, if you have an attempted coup, you punish the people. But if the coup succeeds, the ulama would say you don't go out against it. Why? Because it'll cause bloodshed. And the thing they were always trying to preserve was blood. They didn't want blood spilled, and they considered fitna to be al-fitnatu akbaru min al-qatli. Civil strife is worse than murder. It's worse. Once people start fighting each other, look at Syria, look at Iraq, look at these places where once this breaks out, look at Libya. Thank God it didn't happen in Egypt. All those people would be dead. And every single one of them has a mother and a father, probably living, maybe not, but a lot of them are young in their 20s, these soldiers. So they've got their 45, 50-year-old mother and father. They're going to grieve. They'll never get over it. Ghazala Khan is never going to get over Humayun's. She's not going to get over it. This doesn't happen. Mothers carry that grief to their grave. Nobody wants to bury their children. Each one of them has, and then they've got their extended family, their cousins. Look at all the sadness on people's faces, right? There's no Afghani that hasn't lost a family member. None. I challenge you to find me an Afghani that doesn't have an immediate family member that isn't dead. A brother, a father, a sister, a child, an immediate cousin, an aunt, an uncle. They've all lost people. Huge pain. And so they were just trying to stop that. When Hassan ibn Ali gave up the Khilafah, he was the rightly guided caliph by consensus of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, because the Prophet said the Khilafah would last 30 years. It ended at 29 and a half years with Ali's assassination. Hassan bin Ali took it, he had it for 6 months. And 30 years it was over. And what did he do? You can have it. When he went back, the people that were with him, one of them said, Mudhill al-mu'mini, you've humiliated us. He said, Wallahi, Allah knows I did this to prevent the bloodshed of Muslims. And what did the Prophet say? This man is a Sayyid, and Allah will use him to rectify between two great Muslim forces. Hassan ibn Ali had the haqq, but he literally gave up the haqq to stop the bloodshed of the Muslims. And the Prophet zakka amaluhu. He said that what he did was correct and right. Zakka amaluhu. So giving up in order to stop Muslim bloodshed is the sunnah of the Khulafa al-Rashidin al-Mahdiyin. That's a sunnah that the Prophet zakka wa aqarra. So if you want to know a sunnah, the sunnah is to give up political power if it means you're going to save the lives of Muslims. But there's these people out there, no, right or wrong. We'll take the whole country down. We'll have every house destroyed because we're on the haqq. Even if there's 1 million Muslims have to die in Syria because this is haqq. This is a disease. It's a sickness. That's my belief. Because I actually think life is precious. And I'm not a pacifist. But I'm not going to go kill Muslims. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go out and kill Muslims. Who's benefiting from this? We saw the WikiLeaks. Right? We all saw the WikiLeaks. Didn't you see the WikiLeaks? Who benefits from the destruction of Syria? Who gets the Golden Heights now without any challenge? Right? Who gets all the water? So that's what he's saying. Hifz al-nizam wajibun. It's an obligation to preserve the order, the public order. And then he says, حتى أنجر إلى إجماعهم. Even to the point where the ijma' said you pray behind even bad imams. As long as it's not kufr bawah. As long as it's not absolutely evidential kufr that you can prove before God on the Day of Judgment. As long as his fisq is not fi ayn al-salah, it's actually in the prayer. So if he's praying drunk, you can't pray with him. if he has fisq al-jariha, according to some of them. I mean, you can look in the books of fiqh for that. وَكَذَا يَرَوْنَ جِهَادٍ مَعَ كُلِّ أَمِيرٍ مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And also, they consider defending the lands of the Muslims with every amir of the Muslims, even if it's a good one or a bad one. وَإِنْ كَانَ فَاجِرًا. Right? لَا غَيْرُهُ. That means if he's a kafir, you don't fight with him. وزعم ابن مجاهد إجماع المسلمين وأنكره ابن حزم. And even Ibn Mujahid said that this is the ijma' of the Muslims. And Ibn Hazm said no. وفيه كلام لهما. والمعول عليه المنع بكل حال. So some of them said that it's not negated that, but what's the mu'awwal alayhi, in other words, what the ulama base things on, what they do is that it's prohibited بكل حال, in any situation. فَلَقَدْ قَالَ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ. No people, the Prophet ﷺ said, no people will curse their leader, their amir, except they will be prevented from benefiting from him. They won't get any benefit from him. And that's why the aqidah of Imam Tahawi says, وَلَا نَدْعُ عَلَيْهِمْ. We don't imprecate against the rulers. وَإِنْ جَارُوا عَلَيْنَا. Even if they're oppressive against us. What do we ask? اللهم أصلح ولاة أمورنا. اللهم أصلح ولاة أمورنا. Abu Bakr al-Tartushi said, the most أحمق الناس من دعا على أميره. The most idiotic person is the person that imprecates against his ruler, because he said he's imprecating against himself. He's actually making a dua against himself. Because if he's under that person's rule and his prayers are answered, it makes things worse for him. So he should pray for his guidance. One of the interesting things, and I've said people should do a study of it, because you can do those with decibels. If you go to the haram on Laylat al-Qadr, when the imam's making the dua, Allahumma harrir Filastin, Ameen, like everybody, just decibels go way up. Allahumma wafiq al-Muslimin, Ameen, everything's up. Then Allahumma aslih wulata umurina, Ameen. So they don't want it. They hate them. And they don't get any benefit from them. Maybe we should try another strategy. Maybe we should try another strategy. It's not working, this other thing. Really, I was always amazed at it. Whenever they'd say, Allahumma aslih wulata umurina, some people put their hands the other way. You know, like they do dua, Allahumma harrir Filastin, Allahumma aslih wulata umurina, a'udhu billah. This is the stupidity of our ummah now. Really, we've really become, it's amazing what's happened to us. We don't think. We've just lost the ability to think clearly. And this is a loss of our tradition. The Prophet said, the believer does not humiliate himself. What did Ibn Abbas say about that? يَتَعَرَّضُ لِلسُّلْطَانِ وَلَيْسَ لَهُ مِنْهُ نَصَفٌ. That he opposes the sultan because he's not getting justice from him. That's how you humiliate yourself. It's like Ustad Abdullah Ali who teaches at Zaytuna, he wrote an article about these African Americans that are attacking police. And he said, I don't want to see people killed, but this is not an intelligent strategy, even pragmatically. It's just going to bring all this force against the community. It'll make things worse. It won't make things better. That's intelligence. It's not the other way around. وفي الترمذي, in Tirmidhi, no people will march against their imam one shibran, like just a handspan, in order to humiliate him, except Allah will humiliate them. What do they say now? Yeah, these hadiths were invented by the ulama to protect the rulers. Trust me, these men in these chains, none of them would go near the rulers. That ruined their adala. They couldn't relate hadith if they were known to be in the pay of the rulers. These are not from the rulers. These are hadith that were transmitted by the most upright people who wouldn't even sit with the rulers. Our Prophet, harisun alaykum bil mu'minina ra'uf rahim. He was covetous. He was solicitous of your welfare. What did Sheikh Sa'id say to people? Please, he said, I am an old man. I saw this recorded. He said, I am an old man. I'm in my 80s. I have one foot in the grave. I have nothing to gain. Please, go back to your homes. That's what he said. Please. This was before it got out of hand. And people said, oh, he ma'an nizam. What did he have to gain? He lived in a tiny place. He had no furniture in the house. He was a complete zahid. What was he going to gain? What was he going to gain? He made his ijtihad. Maybe he made some mistakes. That was it. But he was an usuli scholar. And I knew him personally. And I spent time with him. And I don't believe that he was an insincere man. I just don't believe it. Maybe he did make a mistake. I'm not saying he didn't make mistakes. Maybe he did. But this idea somehow that he was a mouthpiece for the government, no. He was concerned about the Syrian population. And if you watch some of what he was saying at the time, it's like a prophet speaking, because he saw what was coming. He said they're going to destroy our country. They're going to rip it apart. He said this is what they're going to do. And now we're seeing some of the evidence that this was much deeper than people realized. And that's not to say it was a good government. I don't think it was a good government. And what they've done since then is horrific. I'm not in any way of supporting what they did and the type of brutality that they unleashed upon the Syrian people, many of whom were simply innocent bystanders caught up in this whole thing. It's a tragic event. But this is fitna, and this is what happens. And now it's not swords, spears, and bows and arrows. It's aerial bombardment. It's aerial bombardment. It's little children getting blown to bits. And just imagine that. I couldn't imagine that. I could not imagine finding one of my children blown to bits. I couldn't imagine it, just humanly. I could not imagine what that would do to my heart. And so how does he end it? He said, all of this can be summed up in the words, from the beautiful Islam of a person is to mind their own business. This is the Islam of our Salaf. This is the Islam of our ulama. People don't want it anymore. They want Marxism. They want Marxism with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim over it. You should just know where it's coming from. That's all I'm saying. If you want it, somebody who's asking, can we reinterpret Islam in the light of postmodernism? They've already done it, folks, if you haven't heard, right? They've done it. And I know who their sources are. All you have to do, get Hizb ut-Tahrir books and get the Chairman Mao books that they used to sell and look at, they're identical. Exact same publishing. They're literally modeled after the Chinese communist books that they used to pass out to people. They're modeled directly after them. The same color scheme, it's amazing. Just look at them. People don't realize how influential Marxism was in the Muslim world. Many of the Islamists were Marxists that transitioned into Islam. So they got all of this Marxist critical theory, and then they became devout Muslims. They brought it all with them. Ali Shariati is a good example. He's a brilliant man. I'm not going to deny that. But he was completely dyed in the wool Marxist in terms of his views. Mujahidun Khalq. All these Iranian Islamists that were basically Marxists. Revolution is a Marxist idea. The end justifies the means is a Marxist idea. Islam, we want to prevent bloodshed. The Marxists say no, the end justifies the means. Even if we have to kill 1 million people, the revolution has to succeed. That's their view. That's not the traditional Muslim view. That's all I'm telling you. Take it or leave it. But I am giving you what our tradition has been teaching for many, many centuries. And these people have abandoned it. They don't believe it anymore. They don't trust it. But this was the unbroken chain, and this is what they taught. And how's it going for you? How do you like this modern Islam? How's it looking? Seriously, how's it looking? Just look, I put a picture up recently of the ulama of Zaytuna in Tunisia. Just take a look at those men. I'd like to spend time with them. I actually did spend time with some of them because I met them when they were still, I saw the last generation of traditional Muslims. I saw it myself. My children won't have that opportunity, and your children won't, but I saw it. I saw the end of Islam. People think that I had some kind of fantasy about West Africa, that I was this white guy that romanticized West Africa. I went into this Orientalist trope and this and that. They don't know what I saw. They don't know when I arrived in Tuwaymarat on camel with people living in tents, studying logic and rhetoric and grammar, studying fiqh and tafsir and hadith, qira'at. I saw that with my own eyes. Never having read a book by any modernist. They didn't have one single book written before the 19th century, after the 19th century. Not one. I saw it with my own eyes. They'd never read Sayyid Qutb. They'd never read Hassan al-Banna. They'd never read Fathi Yakan. They'd never read Sa'id Ramadan al-Buti. None of it. All they had was books that were written in the pre-modern world. So I got to see pre-modern Islam. I saw it. And I saw the last of it because it doesn't exist anymore. There's no place on the earth. Now you go to Tuwaymarat and there's Wahhabis there now. And it's all there. The whole modernist thing is there. But I saw the end of traditional Islam. And so now all we can at best is try to have a new traditionalist approach, which is where you try to keep tradition alive, having already recognized that it's tainted with modernity, it's tainted, and also recognizing that the tradition has to grapple with the reality of modernity because that world doesn't exist anymore, that I saw. When I went there, there were people there that had never heard of America, and I'm not making that up. I'm telling you the God's honest truth. When people asked where I was from, and I said America, some of them literally said, America Manain, where's that? And somebody said, Wara al-Bahar, it's like over the ocean. And one of them said, Zanagat Faransa, those are like the cowboys of France. But I saw that. It wasn't romanticized. I saw it with my own eyes. So that's Islam. And these books they're not easy. This book it's a really tough book to read. I mean, I had the good fortune of reading it with some people that understood it really well. And I'm in an unbroken chain back to Ahmed Zarruq. And so this isn't Foucaultian archaeology of knowledge with trying to work out what things were and what they meant. No, we believe in unbroken oral tradition, transmission, that meanings are transmitted in each generation. And those meanings we know. If you want to know what these words mean, we know what they mean. We know what they mean because our teachers have been teaching these books in an unbroken chain. I have this literally back to Ahmed Zarruq, and I can name every single person in that lineage. When I studied Imam al-Bajuri's text, I studied it with somebody who 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 studied it with Imam al-Bajuri. Each one. And that's true for all the books that I've read with my teachers. They're books of unbroken chains. So we know what these things mean. And if you're going to come and tell me now that they all got it wrong, well, that means just go join another religion. You know, become a Marxist. Like, I wish Daesh would just be Marxist. Just do it in the name of Karl Marx. You know, do it in the name of pure power, whatever. Why are you tainting our religion? Because it's not Islam. What you're saying is not Islam. It's not. And did Muslims do some barbaric things, some horrific things? Yes, undeniably. Did some of the fuqaha justify some of these things? Yes, you will find that. Is that normative Islam? No. You can find everything in Islam. You can find burning apostates. There are opinions. There are legal opinions for that, burning apostates. Is that normative Islam? No. It was rejected. What are these guys doing? They're pulling out these things and they're saying, this is, oh, well, they did it, so we can do it. That's not what our fuqaha said. So in the hadith that Ali burnt apostate, any hadith that has Ali, even if it's sahih, that puts him in a bad light, is questionable. But the hadith is in a chapter on the prohibition of using fire to kill people. So why is he putting the hadith in that chapter to say, I'm aware of this hadith. I'm aware of it, but that's not the ruling. Irrespective of the hadith and the soundness of its chain, this is not the Sharia of Islam. Yes, Muslims did tear down churches. It happened historically. Did the Prophet ever do that? No. What do we know about him? Lam yahdim ma'badan. He never destroyed a place of worship. Did Muslims do that? Yes. Did they justify it by Sharia? Yes. Is that normative Islam? No. So you can take the tradition and you can make it look evil and put it all in. I could do that with Judaism, I could do it with Christianity, and I could do it with Islam. I could write a book on Islam to make it look like the most evil religion, only using Quran, Hadith, and the opinions of ulama in the tradition of Islam. And this is what these people have done, like Robert Spencer and others, using a lot of the Israeli research, because they go through all our books and they pull out every ugly thing and they say, here's Islam. But that's not Islam. I don't care what Graham Wood says. I don't care what Bernard Heikel says. It's not Islam. And you can't tell me. I'm in a chain. And I'm not an apologist for this religion. Unless you want to use that word to mean a defender. But I'm not hiding stuff. I'm not redacting. I'm not saying, oh, let's set this aside here. No, I know what the religion says. I know some of the things that are troubling in the religion. I know all that stuff, and you can put it all on the table. But what is normative Islam? And then, what is slavery acceptable today? No. Our nations signed international agreements to abolish slavery. Those agreements are binding because you cannot break agreements. So nobody can break off and say, oh, we don't accept that. No, it's an ijma' of the Muslims. Slavery was outlawed on this planet, and the Muslims signed all those accords, and the ulama agreed on it. Mauritania abolished slavery in the 60s. Saudi Arabia abolished slavery in the 60s. And the ulama all accepted it. There was an ijma' of the ulama. You can't just bring it back. It's as simple as that. So slavery is over. You can't take Yazidis and make them slaves. I'm sorry. It's not Islam. This is our religion. Anyway, I'm on my soapbox again. My apologies. Tough times. So, next hadith. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.